Do we now have to say goodbye to the Big Bang Theory once and for all? In light of an inexplicable discovery made by the James Webb Telescope, Michio Kaku admits that we need to revise our astronomy textbooks and critically question theories about the origin of the universe. In fact, Webb has now detected a whole series of mysterious structures that should not exist in this form at all and which overturn everything we thought we knew about cosmic evolution. But what are these confusing space mysteries all about? And if it wasn't the Big Bang after all, how could the universe have come into being? Be sure to stay tuned until the end and hear for yourself what Michio Kaku has to say about the impossible Webb discoveries. The expectations and hopes that took off into space on December 25th, 2021, along with the James Webb Telescope, are almost impossible to put into words. More than 10,000 people were involved in the development of the revolutionary observatory, and in the end, it took over 20 years, around $10 billion, and a lot of nerves before the mammoth project was completed. NASA, ESA, and CSA ultimately succeeded in realizing the astronomical dream known as Webb and launching the scientific successor to Hubble and Spitzer. And the first images released in July 2022 made it clear what the much-quoted slogan, "Most powerful space telescope ever," really means. Designed specifically for infrared astronomy, Webb is up to 100 times more sensitive to electromagnetic waves than Hubble. In theory, this marvel of technology would even be capable of identifying the heat of a bumblebee on the surface of the moon from Earth. In practice, however, Webb will be examining galaxies, black holes, and stars to take our understanding of cosmic structure formation processes to an unprecedented level. In addition, it will investigate exoplanets for their potential habitability and track down and decipher the first luminous object that formed after the Big Bang and during the Dark Ages. But what do you actually do when you discover something that, according to our models, shouldn't exist at all? When a discovery is so puzzling that even experts describe it as impossible? Well, in that case, you'd be well advised to ask a physicist like Michio Kaku. Basically, we should remember that the James Webb Telescope is nothing more than an optical time machine. Since light from distant sources takes time to reach our eyes on Earth, we see objects as they were in the distant past. And we really mean the distant past. The 6 reddish structures that Webb discovered in February 2023 already existed when the universe was only 500 to 700 million years old. And just to remind you, according to current scientific opinion, the cosmic birth took place around 13.8 billion years ago. Our solar system, in turn, has been around for about 4.5 billion years. But how is it that 6 simple points of light are shaking our cosmological worldview and owning themselves the inglorious nickname universe breakers? Well, it's quite simple. These are not just any points of light, but very early galaxies that are significantly more massive than our models suggest they should be. But who is wrong? Our models or the universe? Now that the answer is obvious, further questions inevitably arise. Could it be that galaxies formed in a way that is completely unknown to us? That we have simply overlooked a fundamental component of cosmic evolution? Is the cosmos ultimately much older than commonly assumed? And did it perhaps not even originate with the Big Bang? The James Webb Telescope is turning everything upside down. Let's hear what Michio Kaku has to say about this unfortunate astronomical situation. We refer in detail to an interview Kaku gave to NBC News shortly after Webb's discovery. And indeed, it didn't take long for the world-renowned physicist to identify the core of the galactic problem. He said, "The James Webb Telescope is turning everything upside down. Suddenly we realize that we may have to rewrite all our textbooks on the beginning of the universe. It takes many billions of years to form a galaxy. But the James Webb Telescope has identified 6 galaxies that existed just 500 million years after the Big Bang. And even then, these galaxies were up to 10 times larger than our Milky Way. That simply shouldn't be possible. There shouldn't be any original galaxies larger than the Milky Way and only 500 million years old. Something is wrong here. Maybe we need to revise our theories about the origin of the universe." To put Kaku's words into context, we should briefly remember that almost all current cosmological models say that so soon after the Big Bang, there simply wasn't enough normal matter around to form galaxies of this size. As a result, Experts expected to find only tiny baby galaxies at this early stage, but Webb proved them wrong. In fact, the researchers responsible initially believed that they had made a mistake. But since this suspicion could not be confirmed, the mystery only deepened. But what does all this mean in concrete terms? Is the universe much older than we thought? Or are the supposed galaxies ultimately just something like a cosmic mirage? Well, that's exactly what the NBC reporter wanted to know, and Kaku replied, "Some people say it's an optical illusion. According to Einstein, gravity can behave like glass, and glass can be used to make magnifying glasses as we know. We know this effect in astronomy as gravitational lensing. So, you get the impression that the galaxies are enormous when in reality they are just baby galaxies. Personally, however, I believe that the solution to the problem is this. They are not baby galaxies because they are not galaxies at all. In reality, they are monstrous black holes that formed immediately after the galaxies were created. And that baffles scientists because it simply does not fit with the normal process of galaxy formation. So I think that what we are seeing here are huge black holes and that new laws of physics may apply here. And whoever manages to decipher the whole thing is sure to win a Nobel Prize." And lo and behold, looking back, it seems that Kaku was indeed right on the money back then. A few months ago, a team led by Dale Kochevsky from Colby College in Waterville, Maine, concluded that most of the little red dots showed signs of very fast movements typical of the accretion disks of black holes. And where most of the light comes not from stars, but from voracious black holes, there is no need for impossibly high matter densities to explain their existence. But does this mean that the astronomical crisis is now over and we can return to our established models? Well, not really. In truth, the universe breakers were only the tip of a much larger iceberg and marked the starting signal for many more Webb discoveries that are pushing our proven theories to their limits. These include, for example, early black holes of inexplicably high mass, heavy elements that should not yet exist in such large quantities in the early universe, and a whole series of other galactic premature babies that appear far too developed and massive for their age of a few 100 million years after the Big Bang. Has the Big Bang had its day? Let's assume for a moment that the root of the Webb problems that have been discovered really is deep-seated and that the universe did not ultimately begin with the Big Bang. What alternatives to the Big Bang would then be conceivable? Well, for example, that the Big Bang never happened because the cosmos has simply existed for an infinite amount of time. For our everyday understanding, the corresponding theory of a constant universe seems somewhat strange. After all, we live in a world where we are used to everything that exists having come into being. But in fact, some proponents take this idea even further and assume that the constant formation of matter merely gives the appearance that the cosmos is expanding. The theory of eternal inflation is somewhat more compatible with the Big Bang theory, but only in the sense that there was a cosmic starting point at which the universe expanded extremely rapidly. According to this belief, however, this expansion has been continuing eternally in an inflationary manner and only comes to a halt in a few bubble-like sub-areas. Individual sub-universes then form there, and the different worlds can even contain different values for the constants of nature, and thus also different physical laws. The Big Bounce theory also has no fundamental problems with the Big Bang, or should we say, with the Big Bangs, as a cyclical model of the universe. The Big Bounce is based on the assumption that every cosmic end is followed by a new beginning. In other words, when the previous cosmos collapses in the Big Crunch, it creates a successive cosmos, thus maintaining a cycle that repeats itself endlessly. The last and probably the most outlandish theory, however, renders the question of the origin and nature of the universe moot from the outset because, in reality, there is no universe at all. Drawing on quantum physics and string theory, this theory concludes that the universe may be nothing more than a flat hologram projected onto a sphere. Conversely, this means that we are all just part of simulation. This is an almost unbelievable thought, but it's compatible with the so-called Kardashev scale. This scale indicates how far a civilization has developed in terms of its energy use. A Type 3 civilization would be capable of utilizing the total power of a galaxy and thus operating a megastructure like a Russian doll that tricks us into believing a false reality. The subscribe button, however, is not deceiving you at all and does exactly what it promises. So, Go ahead and click on the thumbs up and subscribe now to never miss another video from us. We'll see you soon.